Okay, so is everyone ready with their Yountville special teleconference meeting for the town council? Seeing no one say no, I will go ahead and open the Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. This is a special teleconference meeting of the Yountville Town Council. Before I formally move into the meeting, I will read this introduction. This special meeting of the Town Council is being held pursuant to Government Code Section 54953B related to teleconferencing of meetings. In addition, and pursuant to the Governor's Executive Orders N2520, issuing a proclamation of a state emergency, and subsequent Executive Order N2920, certain sections of the Brown Act relating to teleconference meetings have been waived. The town manager is present in his office. I, as the mayor, am present here in the council chambers. Vice Mayor Dorman, council members Moeller, Dorenbecker, and Durham, along with staff, are participating remotely by video and audio in conformance with the governor's executive order. There has been proper noticing of the accessibility of public comment prior to our meeting as well as during this meeting based on various either digital platforms or postings. So with that, I will ask for the roll call of this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Council member Dorenbecker.
Here.
Council member Durham.
Here.
Council member Moeller.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dorman.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here.
Thank you. And Mayor, before we go on, we could probably bypass the information of being concerned if our council members are not who they say they are, because we do have the video for this particular meeting. Our last meeting we were using audio only, so you can bypass that section if you'd like.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to just combine, I will ask 3 questions at once.
Okay.
I'll confirm that you have an agenda for this town council special teleconference meeting. I'm also going to ask that you can clearly hear, and I'm also going to ask if you agree that the council members are representing themselves appropriately. So a single yes or no if you agree with all of those. So I'll start with the Vice Mayor. Do you agree with all 3 of those things?
Yes, confirm on all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moeller.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorenbecker.
Yes to all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Durham.
Yes to all.
Very good. And I agree as well. So here we are, just cruising right along now. Great. So now, if you would, please join in this virtual Pledge of Allegiance. If you are unable to find a flag where you are, I am turning my computer so that you can see the flag here in the council chambers. So
That's great.
Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag,
of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I realize the audio is kind of broken up because we can't all talk at the same time, but thank you all very much. Next, adoption of the agenda. We've already had roll call, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion for adoption of this agenda?
so moved.
I believe I'll take Councilmember Moeller as the motioner and Councilmember Durham as the seconder to adopt today's agenda. We could have a roll call vote for that. Let's start with Vice Mayor Dorman.
Yes.
Councilmember Moeller.
Yes.
Councilmember Durham.
Yes. Move. Yes.
Got you out of order. Sorry. Councilmember
that's right.
Dorenbecker.
Yes.
Thank you. And I agree. So we have adopted our agenda. Next, proclamations and recognitions. We have a recognition of the Town and Finance Department for receiving the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the current fiscal year. And I believe we're going to hear from our town manager, Steve Rogers.
Yes, briefly. Normally, it would be my opportunity to bring the finance director up and we would present our plaque and add another year. So I do want to footnote that this is multiple years now going on, at 7 or 8, that the town has received this acknowledgement. And I do want to point out that this is truly a team effort when it comes to preparing the budget. So it's quite an honor for an agency of our size to receive the GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. So my thanks to the team, the finance team, Celia. Also want to acknowledge all the department heads and their support team that went into this. And it's kind of ironic that we move into this with a budget year, and we will look forward to earning the town another recognition with the upcoming budget. I don't know, Celia, if you'd like to add anything.
I think you covered it. Thank you, Steve, and thank you also to the council for all your support in all the budget preparation that we go through. I think this upcoming year might present some challenges, but we're definitely going to strive to continue receiving that award. Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the entire council and your colleagues with the town staff. I know you didn't anticipate this being your first year as finance director, but you're certainly going to get an entire career's worth, I think, in this first full year anyway. So thank you very much. And for the rest of our staff, it helps Celia do all that work. It's going to be critical in the next several months and year for sure, as we look at very unique economic challenges, and we are continuing to stay committed to being fiscally sound and solvent, and we have plans already underway to make sure that that's true. So thank you very much, Celia, and the rest of our team. We're going to move on now to our, well, first we'll start with public comment on any matters not on our agenda. Michelle, do we receive any public comment requests or statements?
No, we have not, Mayor.
Thank you. And with no members of the public present, I'll move right on to the consent calendar. We have 3 items listed. Ratification of Proclamation 2020-01 issued by the Director of Emergency Services proclaiming the existence of local emergency to respond to the coronavirus and adopting orders and regulations related thereto. We also have item 7B, receive and file monthly financial report for February 2020, as well as minutes of the special meeting held March 23rd, 2020. And I believe that's all of our consent calendar. Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
I believe that was Councilmember Moeller, and the motion was that Vice Mayor is the second.
No, it was Marita.
Okay, Marita, Councilmember Dornbecker second. Voice vote, please. Vice Mayor Dorman.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Moeller.
Yes.
Councilmember Durham.
Yes.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and I agree. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we go to our presentation for today. You're going to see the screens change a little bit as we hear from Samantha Holland for our 2019 Parks and Recreation Department Annual Report. Samantha.
Hey there. So just as a reminder, as I share the screen, it will change how you see each other on the, you'll probably all move to the right. But then as soon as I stop sharing the screen, it will go back to your original settings. So just be ready for that. I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation. All right. Is everybody able to see that? Thank you. So this is definitely an interesting 10th annual report that I'm here presenting with you today. So virtually, it's actually a little more nerve-wracking than in person, in my opinion. But I appreciate you having us, my presentation on the agenda today. So this is the 2019 annual report recap. Sorry, I gotta get my buttons going. So this is a recap of the annual year of 2019. Our mission in Parks and Recreation for the town is to offer healthy, cost-effective, and innovative opportunities for community connection. And this is a group of pictures in the annual report. So we break it up by budget area, and the first one would be the administration and services budget. And under this area is all of our pretty much administrative overhead, and then the administrative acts of our department, which includes supporting the Town Yountville Community Foundation, the Arts Commission, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, all of the registration processing, our facilities, not facilities, our park reservations, and all of our special event permitting as well. And so for 2019, some of our accomplishments were really that ongoing support of all of the commissions. We processed over 5,000 individual registrations for programs through our registration software system. We also held a strategic planning retreat where we planned for the future. We successfully recruited and hired our facility and event specialist, which is Danielle Zoller, who's just coming up on her 6-month anniversary with us. And we also completed a digital park and community tour to market better our community parks facilities through a Google contractor, which turned out really well. For this upcoming year that's already ongoing, we're looking at an online facility scheduler through the company that we already utilized for registration software. We're also starting to implement DocuSign, thanks to Michelle and her team for all that hard work on getting that going. So we'll utilize that with our permitting applications, as well as some other contracts and different utilizations to make it easier and more user-friendly for us, for internally for staff, for routing things, as well as for the community. We're also working on the Laserfish project, which is migrating a lot of our files that we will keep forever into Laserfish instead of on the electronic drive. And then those files that we do keep paper copies, we're building a program for scanning and archiving those as well. We're also looking at a different check-in system for people. So it's all very paper processed now, but we're looking at ways to simplify that with some of the more web-based systems for checking in when you come to a class or when you come to do drop-in pickleball or something like that. And we're also revamping the way we handle camp registration to make it easier for staff to manage. So I think what my goal was is that I'll share for each area and then ask if anybody has questions. So the administrative statistics, I just, on the PowerPoint, obviously I'm sharing the last 2 years, but we can, in the report, go back 5 or more years. And so park site reservations for 2019 increased slightly. We asked how many people are at each event so that we can capture that, how many people, and then the revenue obviously was up. Event permit wise, we saw a substantial increase in the number of special event permits we processed, and mainly that is with some of the new businesses coming online or having their use permit evaluated and having other requirements for applying for special events. So the biggest jump we've seen in those applications are with our different businesses in town. And then, of course, amplified sound and film permits, and then the registration numbers that come through. So are there any questions on this area?
And a reminder, if any council members have questions, please unmute.
No? Okay, I will move on. So the next area is day camps. So we operate the day camp program anytime there is not school. This program, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty around Yountville Elementary School, but we're confident that our day camp program is a standalone. We serve kids from all over the Napa Valley, a lot of them whose parents work up Valley, but find our care in our program a really good fit for them. And so in 2019, we accomplished adapting to not having the Yountville Community Pool online anymore. We found creative solutions to keep the kids having that swim experience every week. We partnered with Napa Parks and Recreation, and we went to the Napa High Pool once a week and formed a really great relationship with Napa Valley Transportation and their team to get us back and forth using the city bus. So that was exciting. We also saw some really great growth in attendance in this program, which I'll show you shortly. And I'm also really proud of this particular program because in a time where it's been difficult for us to recruit and retain part-time staff, that's not just an issue for us, but really, everywhere. We've really done a wonderful job in camps retaining a good core group of employees, and then also recruiting a few new ones every year. So I think that tends to lean towards, we provide a really great opportunity for young people in this job. And so I'm proud of that. So for this summer, or for the goals for this year is really, I already pointed out under administration, is to streamline our registration process, updating how we check kids in and out, really building a model to sustain this program regardless of if we have the use of the Yountville Elementary School campus or not. We have a backup plan in place, and it's really just a location. I don't believe that this program's success is tied to us having an elementary school in Yountville. As I mentioned, I know it will stand alone. So we already have some backup plans in place about location. And then just continuing our goal of employee development. So a lot of times in Parks and Recreation is the first job for a lot of young people. So at 15, 16, 17, and even 18 years old, it's the first time that they've gained employment in the workforce. And so we put a lot of time and effort and investment into them. I think I've pointed out before, when we've recruited for summer camp, we interview every applicant we get. And we do that because we're building skills for these kids, whether or not we hire them. And we take it pretty seriously once we do hire them, and really bringing them along and teaching them some really great skills that will lead them into the future. So for numbers wise, the last 2 years, so as I mentioned, we saw a pretty great increase in camp registration over 2018. And so camp is 8 weeks during the summer, 3 weeks about during winter break, and then the 3 days before Thanksgiving, and then spring break as well last year. Obviously that won't be the case this year. Of those 898 camper registrations, 203 of those were Yountville residents, which is pretty terrific. And obviously that's up from years past. And we saw a growth in revenue as well. Are there any questions about the day camp area? No?
I see no questions. Thank you, Samantha.
Okay. So moving on to the community center, and this is focusing on the facility rental side of the community center, not the general programming use. So in 2019, working obviously very closely with our terrific public works team, we are able to get the emergency generator installed that will power the community hall in the event of a power outage or emergency. And we hope in the next few months, or possibly in the next budget year, to be able to also have that generator power the community center, which is fantastic. Again, we were able to recruit and hire the facility event specialist. So that person is the first person scheduled when we have a fee-based rental on the community center. We also did some minor updates to lighting inside the community hall, and we completed the digital tour of the community hall. So that included some really terrific professional photos, as well as a fully interactive tour that I had brought before you as a informational item a few months back. So really our goals for 2020 are going to be pushing marketing packages. So really, and a lot of time is being spent right now doing research into how other municipalities offer their community centers and buildings for rentals, and where is it that we are not or falling short of really pushing and being competitive in the Napa Valley for that. We have kind of a one model that we have been working with for quite some time, and it's time to definitely evolve that. And so we're exploring different ways of offering different tiers of services for people and attracting different community groups, as well as private event holders that we may not have in the past. We're also looking at different marketing efforts that have to do with partnering with our and working more closely with our lodging properties and the Chamber of Commerce, and utilizing the fact that although some of the local lodging properties have areas such as meeting rooms and things like that, they technically can't hold a large conference or group, but possibly working together, we can attract more of that type of thing to town. So we're really aggressively working on what will be, by the end of this calendar year, a very new model for how we package and operate the rental side of the community center. And so obviously, a lot of that will come before the council as far as looking at the fees and charges, as far as evaluating that and changes coming forward, and then just updating overall. Something else we're also really working on is emergency preparedness. So we learned a lot through the emergencies that we've had the past few years, and then the PSPS events, how the community looks to the community center and the town staff for support during those things, and how we can be better equipped to handle them. And so obviously the generator was a huge part of that. Also working with our IT and Julie to work on some different concepts for internet access and different things like that. And then just having supplies on hand that we think we might need. We're also in discussions with PG&E of being a community space through them, which they would offer some funding for supplies and also upgrades as well. So that's something that's in the works right now. Wrong way. So statistics wise, we did see quite a drop in the number of daily rentals at the community center, and also a significant drop in revenue. A couple of those things, and there's an asterisk here, but it's outlined in a lot more specific detail in the report, was 2 large scale events that we had in 2018 that we did not have in 2019. And that included the Dent event that came to Yountville for 1 year and then chose a different city in the United States. And that was a pretty significant revenue bump for us, as you can see, over 2017, as well as Yountville Live did not use our facility in 2019 as well. So a couple of things created an inflation in 2018 that was not normal, and then obviously show the decreased revenue for 2019. That being said, we did see a decrease in the number of private rentals at market rate that we hold in the facility in 2019. We've really ran through and analyzed that, and I think that part of the changes that we're looking at are how do we better bring people in and give them the services that they're looking for, whether it's I want a base level of service where I just get the building and the stuff and I do everything, to I need a little bit more help. I don't have anyone to set up. I need you to help me with, finding a caterer and those types of things. So we're really analyzing how to evolve those services. And, the community center, a part of the decrease is the amount of programming that we offer that we don't necessarily have the availability that we once had because of the number of programs. The other side of it is, how do we capitalize and make sure that, we are rented. My goal would be 48 to 50 Saturdays of the year that facility should be rented for some sort of an event. And then every other, during the week should be focusing on different trade events or meetings that we could solicit. Are there any questions about the community center?
I will ask a question here, Samantha. Could you just update all of us on how we are handling reservations going forward here in 2020? How far out are we making decisions about availability or not availability? Is it based on the emergency declaration and Napa County stay-home orders? Or if you could just touch on that, please.
Absolutely. So obviously, things change every day almost. It feels like it's slowing down. So maybe we're at an every third day issue, change coming up. But we originally began with the stay-at-home orders. We reached out as far as those were in effect, and assisted any of our current reservations with cancellation or postponement. We extended our cancellation policy and refund policy, obviously, to anybody that touched base. Everything has been canceled or rescheduled through May at this point. We're not really receiving many phone calls about anything. We had people who did move into July and then another event into October. So we're hoping that some of those things will come to fruition, but we really are just kind of in a wait and see at this point. as far as what that direction could be. Of course, Napa County's or the California order didn't have an end date. Napa County's did, but I think we're all anticipating that potentially being extended anyways. So we're really just, internally, we're really looking at more of into June and July is how we're looking at it.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to remind the council that at the bottom of the screen, you have the participants icon. If you click on that, it lists everyone that's on here, and you can click at the bottom, it says raise hand. If you click on that, it will literally put a little blue hand next to your name, and I can identify that you have a question because right now I can't see everybody on the screen. So I put my hand on there. I'm lowering my hand. So are there any questions from the council? And if you could literally raise your hand in your camera view, I can also check that way.
Mayor, in addition, there's an arrow at the bottom of the 4 people displayed, and that allows you to scroll to see all the participants if you'd like to use that.
And I have used that. I just can't see everybody at once. So
Okay.
couldn't tell if
All
somebody might have their hand up.
Okay.
Carrie, Vice Mayor, either you were raising your hand or you were blocking your camera, one of the two.
Sorry, I was just looking for the button, but I don't need to raise my hand. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're okay, Samantha, to continue.
Okay, perfect. So the next area we'll discuss is the before and after school program. And so obviously we look at this one a little differently. We look at it as a school year. And so we look, the report that we're focusing on right now is looking at last school year, which would have been June 2018, August 2018 through June 2019. So accomplishments in that area were really the monthly billing program that Garrett, who's the coordinator in charge of the program, and Stacy, as you all know, our admin assistant, worked on a monthly billing, and we got every single family on that monthly billing. And so it was really a time saving for us and ensured that that revenue stream was consistent. We also continued partnering with the school and the PTA for the Wednesday enrichment program. That particular program, we brought in a contract instructor, and the kids were broken up into 3 different programs by age group, and it ranged from crafts and different things like that. With Guild Napa Valley, also different technology programs, as well as yoga and other sports and fitness programs as well. That was a very successful program. We also initiated a waste reduction program. And so we used to use a lot of disposable products for snacks. We converted to non-disposable products. And we're really excited to see about a 2/3 of a waste reduction in that program using non-disposable products for snacks and drinks and different things like that, which is very exciting. So this school year, things that we're working on are continuing that enrichment program. And really preparing for the end of the school operations and how we can support those families through that. Obviously, that has evolved into something I think none of us could have ever expected. What exactly that end of school and really wrapping up an era is going to look like is still yet to be determined. I think there's a lot of feelings and uncertainty around that, but I've personally reached out to the principal and said, we want to support however we can to make sure that those families and staff and really our community has some sort of closure. And then really focusing on preparing for services in the best way that we can for the future. And so still really not knowing what that will look like as far as the children who live in Yountville and are bused home every day. We still don't have any type of information as relates to that from the school district to help us plan. And so we want to make sure that we're nimble, and with the council's support through the budget process, hopefully we're able to, have a placeholder there to offer services if at all feasible. And so looking at the financials and statistics for the program, last school year, we served 244 registrations. So we count them once per month. So Homework Club had 244. We had 170 full-time registrations and 49 Breakfast Club, with that revenue increasing pretty substantially. So the revenue increases are mainly due to having more children in full-time care, which is obviously more expensive every month. So some of the questions that I would anticipate you or the public having is, well, what happens here? So through the budget process, we'll talk a little bit about the placeholder that we're holding in the event that there is a service need that is a sustainable service need for us to provide. It obviously most likely won't be on site at the elementary school, but potentially at the community center. There really are very limited childcare resources in Yountville, and those that are there are mostly for preschool age children and not school time care. So we're really just kind of in a wait and see on that, and hopefully we'll have some sort of information about that in resolution by the end of the school year, but we will wait and see. So happy to answer any questions about that program.
I see that Councilmember Durham does have a question. I see that blue hand raised.
Thank you. Samantha, can you give an idea of that 2018-2019, what percentage were from families in town and what percentage were families from out of town, as a means of looking at that moving forward?
Yeah, so in the particular program itself, we serve, I don't know how I break it up in those numbers, but we have 27 resident kids that we're serving right now in the programs. And so, not every because we have 37 resident children who are in elementary school in NVUSD. So we know that. So we serve 27 of those resident kids in the after school program. And so we really, if kids are in 4th or 5th grade, sometimes the parents don't send them anymore, or mom or dad don't, work outside of the home. And so they don't need the services, but we anticipate, I still don't have a firm number on how many of those children will be attending the new resident school. Those would be the only children that would have the option to be able to ride the bus back and forth. The children who chose a different home school or different school through the transfer process would not be offered transportation, is what my understanding is. So as far as the program is concerned, we're not, if we were to evolve and try to offer something, we really would not be able, to sustain a program with 8 kids per se. So it's not just if there is a need, but also is that need a sustainable option for the town to be operating a program for. So we're really going to have to do some tough analysis on that type of decision.
Thank you, Samantha. I don't see any other blue hands raised, but I'll take a quick scan through. Seeing no one else raising their hands. Samantha, did you have anything further?
Not on this one.
Okay.
So next is leisure programs. So leisure programs consist of our golden ticket program and then any of our contract classes that we offer, as well as our excursion program. And so for 2019, we had 142 as our height of golden ticket members, which was very exciting. We also have really done a lot of emphasis on fitness, both in our older adult programming as well as just as a whole. And I'm really just proud of the evolution that our team continues to have, and especially Jennifer, on finding creative programs and services so that it doesn't get stagnant, and that we're continuing to always adapt to the needs and requests of that community. So that kind of dovetails right into the goals for 2020, which is continuing to evolve. So, we want people to not feel like the classes are stale, for Golden Ticket especially, but also to take into consideration that there are ones that they look forward to doing all the time, and maintaining those, and then continuing with our high quality excursion program as well. So just statistic wise, so our leisure classes and programs in 2019, we saw, and this is each registration. So each time someone registers, so we obviously count them differently, but we had 5,735 registrations for residents and 6,346 for non. And so this is one of our programs where we see the highest utilization of our residents, which is really terrific. It's almost half. In the Golden Ticket program itself, we see about 75% of that registration coming from residents, which is our highest program other than pickleball. So as far as revenue is concerned, we see a it's pretty equal from the year before. In 2018 and 19, we offered 4 trips to Hamilton, which most of that revenue came in 2018. So we saw a pretty significant bump in 2018 from that Hamilton revenue, which obviously we didn't see again in 2019. Are there any questions about leisure programs that I can answer?
Councilmember Dornbecker, question.
Yes, please. Thanks, Sam. That sounds really great, everything that you do. I'm delighted that you are going to be incorporating more preparedness. But we had a preparedness meeting by Zoom last week with Carrie and a bunch of people who had signed up. And Billy Hewitt was one of them. And she said that she's been playing bridge via Zoom. Is this something that the town is facilitating for the residents to play some of these games through Zoom?
Yeah, so we're working on how we're evolving right now. So I don't know, I don't believe the bridge is yet up on our Zoom, so they may be doing that internally, but it is something we're working on. But we this week premiered 6 of our Golden Ticket classes through Zoom, and we're working with those other instructors to hopefully continue adding more. So we had, I believe it was 13 people on one of our fitness classes yesterday morning via Zoom, which was really terrific. So again, Jen and Stacy, and even the other team who's helping to make weekly phone calls to all of our Golden Ticket members, in helping them by phone to navigate some of the hiccups that they may be experiencing with the technology side of things. But so far, it's really working well for that kind of small test group, and then we're going to continue to ramp that up and evolve it.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Councilmember Dornbecker, if you could now lower your blue hand, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions for this section? Seeing none. Samantha?
Next. Oops, wrong way. So next, just quickly, I'll touch on our sports program. So I feel like our team feels like it's a really great accomplishment and our continued participation and support in partnership with the Pickleball Steering Committee. So we really work with them closely and help them kind of guide how we program those services. For 2019, we're really, again, just paying attention to scheduling. So with our new outdoor, I still call them new, even though it's been over a year, outdoor courts. We really look at that plus some of the programming going on in the city of Napa and how we schedule so that we can make sure we're optimizing the indoor play time so that we get enough people there to sustain it. And so that kind of dovetails into the seasonal hours conversation as well. And we're always continuing to analyze our youth sports. So we really ramped that down based on, the demographics of our community over the last 5 to 6 years. We still are maintaining a preschool sports program, but looking at that very closely and how we're offering that and marketing it to optimize that for the time that's put into it. So that's something we will look for. Keep going the wrong way. So as far as our sports programs, the mini sports enrollment, it's a fairly small program. And then our open gym basketball continues to be very successful, and open gym pickleball. You'll see a decrease in the amount of open gym pickleball drop-ins from 2018. And that really, for me, is attributed to the outdoor courts being utilized during those seasons where they can be. We drop back the amount of hours that we offered indoor. And then our revenue is up just a little bit. Any questions on sports? No blue hands? All right. So one of our major areas is community events. And so we program all of the free and low cost community events out of this area that include, Yountville Days, music in the park, movies in the park, the Easter egg hunt. So many of these things right now we're, working so hard at planning that are in limbo, but we will evolve. But 2019 accomplishments, we did receive, we paid for 80% of the hard cost of offering the movies in the park through sponsorships from local businesses and individuals, which was terrific. We had another very successful residents bash. We had our largest music in the park season to date as far as attendance is concerned. We did switch to offering only healthy snack concessions at the movie nights. And we worked really hard to revamp and reinvigorate Yountville Days, which I think was successful. Going into 2020, we were working on a sponsorship program for Music in the Park. So the Music in the Park series, and hopefully bringing on sponsors for that. And then also just continuing the trajectory of Yountville Days, which Bottle Rock just moved to Yountville Days weekend. We heard that a couple weeks ago. So we're probably looking at the last weekend in September. But again, everything is so fluid right now that we're going to see how that lands on the calendar. As far as community events are concerned, we serve the largest, obviously, number of people in this area. So this is a glimpse of most of the things that we do: movies in the park and the attendance, Yountville Days, music in the park, community and tree lighting, the egg hunt, camp out, residents bash. And then we also include how many bags of popcorn we offer and order and serve every year. So those are our Wednesday popcorn numbers as well. Are there any questions on community events?
I apologize.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, John. I didn't get to the blue hand. I apologize, Mayor. I just want to say that Yountville Day speaks volumes to what you guys did. We had such a good time this year, and no matter when it is, it just speaks volumes to the work you guys did. You guys turned it around so quickly, and the changes you made were so good. So it's nice to be talking about and looking at those positive things right now. So thank you very much for your work.
Thanks, Jeff.
And I was going to ask Samantha, typically, or at least lately, we have started Yountville Days earlier, and obviously it would impact the music festival portion of that if it were to stay on the same date as Bottle Rock, but Bottle Rock does have a noon start time. If we had to share that date, we could get at least a portion of that event before it directly conflicts. But there, as you stated, there's a lot up in the air between now and those dates.
Yeah, there is. And I just, we just put so much emphasis on kind of the afternoon part after the parade with the chili cook-off and vendors that, I think it probably would be in our best interest to move to accommodate that event. So, obviously I was not consulted before, but that's okay. We'll roll with it.
I like how you've now got the sunlight spotlight going on your.
I'm in front of a window. I'm trying to adjust it.
But go ahead.
There we go. So we'll just see how that pans out and evolve with it.
No other questions. You've got a couple more slides, I think.
Yep, wrapping up, Yountville Arts really is our last main area. And so we broke this out in the budget last year to just really give emphasis on how much the department supports the really important work that Yountville Arts does. So in 2019, along with obviously the very active work of the commission, we were able to support 79 different artists, whether it was from Art Sip and Stroll in the gallery or on the art walk. We installed 9 new sculptures last year. We really worked, especially in huge thanks to Commissioner Cavenencia, about really revitalizing our social media aspect for Yountville Arts. They also launched the audio tour of the Art Walk, We've ramped up book events, and they did set a fund policy for managing the art fee fund for the art walk. So for 2019, or that's a typo, obviously, for 2020, we're really looking at continuing the work that's been done, and really the high level of momentum that they operate on with the Arts Commission, and then just looking at creative ways to attract more high quality art for the art walk.
And I see Councilmember Dornbecker has a question.
Yes.
Yes, Sam. My question is about the sculpture for the school. I haven't heard anything about it, and I was wondering if you had any status update on that.
Yeah, so that the Arts Commission discussed that again last night, and so it'll be coming back to the ad hoc again for some input as we kind of worked through that process a little bit. Some of the concepts that we were talking about were going to be a little more difficult, so it'll come back to the ad hoc again for some further discussion. And obviously, we have more time than we consider now, since school is not in session, so we're going to have to be strategic on how we unveil that and do the rest of it. So you'll see an email from me on it this week.
I don't see any other hands, so let's have the big conclusion.
So I'm wrapping it up. So this year we celebrated our 10th anniversary at the community center, and I hope that the council can agree that I've been there for almost 10 years in July, and I really am proud of the trajectory of the Parks and Recreation Department and really what we are able to provide at the beautiful community center. I think that I've heard from residents, some of them were not as excited about that project 10 years or 15 years ago as they are now, who really do say, like, I can see now how this is really helping the community and how it's a hub for the community. We offered 52 different programs, classes, and events each month. It's 108 hours of programming per week at the height of our season. And we provide over 65,000 opportunities for those connections that are in our mission. So, and that doesn't even include the people who visit our parks that we can't count, or enjoy the art walk, or go to the public restrooms in our facilities all the time, which is very important when we have a lot of our visitors. So I really am very proud of the team that we have, and the hard work and the heart that goes into what we do. We're obviously in an interesting time right now in our history, and I think we're working really hard to come up with innovative ways to keep our community connected and getting them to utilize some of the online methods of connection. But we're just picking up the phone and checking in every week as well. So we may not be there physically at the office, but we are all working very hard every day to continue supporting our residents through this incident in our lives. So I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samantha. Great report. Are there any last, I don't see any hands up, but are there any questions from council members?
I just say thank you. You do a great job, and we appreciate it, Sam.
Thanks, Marita.
Any other council members? Seeing none. Yes, I think we can all agree that the last few months especially have added unique challenges, and it's not only good to look back, but also get a sense of how you're looking forward already to making the rest of 2020 successful, continuing. We're gonna get to that day where we are able to get out and enjoy our socializing together. And I know that our Park and Rec's staff, as well as our commissioners, are going to really be creative and supportive so that we can all take full advantage of all those assets that we have here. So thank you very, very much for all you've been doing. Thank you to our entire team, and thanks in advance for what we're going to be doing going forward. With that, we are going to move on to our public hearing for today. It is to update the master fee schedule, and I'll just read this before I invite Sandra to give a staff report. Consider adoption of resolution 20-3976, adopting new fees related to major home occupation, annual use permitting monitoring, building permit technical upgrade, building permit digitization, and alcohol beverage service one-day event, alcoholic beverage service letter of public convenience and necessity, and authorizing town staff to update the master fee schedule, regulating these fees and charges. So I believe we're going to start with Sandra.
Good afternoon. We have before you 3 new categories of fees for your consideration, and they are new fees that aren't currently in our master fee schedule. The first is for major home occupation use permit monitoring fee. And you know that all businesses that hold a use permit to operate in town are subject to the payment of this annual monitoring fee. That fee is currently $604. It applies across the board to all of the commercial businesses that operate in the business district, and it covers time and tracking that business over the course of the year to make sure that they're complying with the whole host of conditions of approval that apply. There's a category of home occupation that also is subject to a use permit, and that is the major home occupation, and that is anything more than an office use at home or the storage of some materials or a vehicle associated with a business in the garage. And we don't see many of these, but recently over the last few years, we did have one, Aware Care on Jefferson Street, that was subject to the higher rate of $604. And in monitoring that business, we've come to understand that it takes less staff time to monitor an at-home business, and there are fewer issues. So we are recommending that we apply or have a new fee in the amount of $252, and that is the same fee that we use to monitor administrative use permits. And we think that accounts for the fact that less time goes into these monitoring projects. We are proposing 2 new fees that are associated with building permits. The first of which is a technology upgrade fee. And this is associated with our move toward digital processing of permits. And it would pass along some of the cost of this annual license and the program to the applicants that are applying to permits. And the way we determined the amount of the fee was we looked at the annual license amount for iWork, which is our online permitting system. And we looked at half of that goes directly toward the processing of permits for applicants. We determined the average number of building permits per year, and it comes out to about $35 per building permit. And that is a new fee. The other one is for the digitization of paper plans. And for the most part, we see applicants submit electronic copies, but on occasion, mostly a resident or on a smaller project, we don't see those plans. And we've determined a fee based on what the average staff time would be to copy and scan the different files to our system. And for the smaller pages, we're proposing in the range of $5. And for the larger set of plans, the 24 by 36, which is your typical drawing set, we're proposing $38 a page, and that's based on staff cost. The last 2 fees are associated with ABC and alcohol service. And one is for a one-day event, probably most commonly at the community center. And for those requests from ABC, we're looking at what the event is and signing off on it for that event. We have determined it takes up to about half an hour of staff time, and so we're suggesting a fee of $75. The other fee is to issue a letter that is called a letter of public convenience or necessity. And that is required for any new alcohol establishment in town because there's an undue concentration of establishments. And that's simply based on the number of restaurants that hold liquor licenses and in relation to the town's population. So most often that's a fee that gets incorporated into the use permit deposit and review of an application, and it's approved by council with conditions of approval. But here recently, we've received a request at the Veterans Home to review a license over which we have no land use authority. And there are many questions as to how security is managed, whether they're outdoor events, whether there's noise and music, etc. And so we estimate it takes about 2 hours to issue those letters, and the fee that is proposed is $295. All three categories of fees, we've tried to determine what the actual cost to town staff is and the time and effort we put into these projects, and that is what is based. That is what is before you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing no hands, but I can see everyone on the one shared screen. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Liston. You mentioned that most of our residents do not turn in digital format. So could you speak to the financial impact on our residents as compared to the larger projects that are going digital? And I just want to make sure that by doing this, it seems like if a resident had 10 pages of plans, which may or may not be unusual, you'll tell me, then we're looking at $400 plus onto their project. So I just wanted to hear from you on what this means real time to a resident, perhaps.
First, I want to clarify that it is not most residents that submit paper copies of plans rather than the electronic. It's more for the smaller projects. So we see more of those in terms of residents than commercial businesses. Whenever you have an architect working on a project and you have a new house or a new building or even a major remodel or addition to a home, those are always electronic versions. And that is the vast majority of the plans we get. We might see something like a resident who wants to install a new gas line to a kitchen to run a gas stove. It'll be a one-page plan. It would be the smaller size. That would be $5. So I think we're really looking at small charges to residents for these based on the types of paper plans we get in.
Great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Any questions? Steve.
One thing I just want to also, this is one of the last areas that we've been working on automating, and as part of our fees. Michelle in the town clerk role and planning and building know that one of the areas where we receive the most Public Records Act requests actually comes in the planning and building area, because they'll be looking at what was on file before, what's historically been done. So when we look at the building fee component, this is how we're recovering that moving forward. It also is going to help us to reduce some of the future staff time associated with Public Record Act responses, because we'll be able to steer them towards our public portal. And again, prior council's direction, especially in the discretionary area of land use and planning, has been that we have the cost recovered by the applicants. And I say that rather than all of the ratepayers or taxpayers. So it's consistent with that. And as Director Liston pointed out, we are recovering about 50% of the cost, and the town is absorbing the other 50% of the digitalization and records enhancement. But I just wanted to share that background.
Thanks, Steve. So I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to go ahead and formally open the public hearing and ask our clerk, Michelle, have you received any public comments by email or e-comment?
I have not, Mayor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And have not seen any e-comments in our electronic agenda. So with that, are there any other questions or comments from the council, or is there action to be had on this item? And if we have discussion, I need to close the public hearing before we actually act. So any comments as part of the public hearing? Don't think we will have any. I'll close the public hearing and ask for either discussion or action. Any council members? Councilmember Dornbecker, I think you're reaching for your button. Go ahead.
That's pretty good, yes. I would like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 20-3976, adopting new fees related to major home occupational use, annual use permit monitoring, building permit technical upgrades, building permit digitization, and alcoholic beverage service one-day event, alcoholic beverage service letter of public convenience and necessity, and authorizing the town staff to update the master fee schedule regarding these fees and charges.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Councilmember Durham. All in favor, I will go ahead and ask for a roll call vote, starting with Vice Mayor Dorman.
Yes.
Councilmember Moeller.
Yes.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes.
Councilmember Durham.
Yes.
And I say yes as well. That does pass unanimously. Thank you very much, Sandra. And we are now going to move on to our next item, which is the Proclamation 2021-01 COVID-19 Declaration of Local Emergency. I believe we're going to have Steve give us a staff report. We also have Gary on the line if we have any legal questions, but I'll go ahead and invite Steve to present the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Council. I'm going to try to be brief and then open up some areas for discussion as to how the town is coping with and what actions we may want to yet make. But briefly, as you all know, we are working with a virtual town hall operation with a skeleton crew. Majority of our administrative, technical, and support staff are working remotely. We do keep a call center operation 8 to 5 open at Town Hall, and we have the ability to coordinate amongst various teams. We are also maintaining our public works, parks maintenance, streets, and utility operations, our essential workers. We've shifted schedules to allow for appropriate social distancing and arrange for it. And we're also using different time schedules for those folks so that they're also working to maintain the level of infrastructure. I will also share that we are able to continue infrastructure projects and we've actually taken advantage of that opportunity to move forward with a handful of projects. You've seen pictures in the Friday blurb of the slurry seal of the parking lot, the 2180 Madison parking lot, the town hall parking lot, and Marita, our council member Dornbecker is certainly aware of this. We're moving with the public education and outreach for the Oak Circle repaving project that will start next week. The flyers were delivered. So we are putting in place, and the contractors are required to have a COVID-19 policy, and that's consistent with the county public health officer's most recent update. Another area where we made some service changes as it relates to its building inspection services. We have reduced from 3 days to 2 days. We're currently having building inspection services Monday and Wednesday. I'm pleased to report that the feedback from those businesses are incredibly appreciative because it allows them, if you will, to make lemonade out of a bad situation. So they're being able to work and continue projects, and we have a handful of housing developments that are able to continue with their renovations. Currently, we're also, I think, probably going to be seeing some positive shift in our technology, as Director Liston was talking about how people are communicating and interacting. We're better able to now, we're forcing people to make appointments to come in and talk with us about what they want to do. So in some cases, a neat side effect is, in many cases, we're able to better issue an over-the-counter permit because they're talking with us and we don't have a, oh, you forgot this, or what about this type of a thing. So that part's continuing to go on. We also, I sent you earlier all a copy of the requirements consistent with the county health order that the construction sites need to do in order to continue in operation. So that's been well received. We've also been working with the Chamber of Commerce to encourage the businesses that are closed to look at if this is the time that they may want to take advantage of some of these activity to renovate or update. We do have a fairly significant project that was started before this situation with Napa Valley Lodge, and also Hotel Yellowville has been undergoing an HVAC renovation. Probably one of the most challenging opportunities we've had, and Samantha talked a lot about it in the Park and Rec discussion, is we fundamentally had to change the approach of how we connect with our community through our Parks and Rec. Most programming has been completely canceled and restructured. You've heard what we're doing. We're just really excited, and it's challenging our staff, and they're working in different ways. The other thing that is really challenged, and our team is working in different ways, is we've expanded and enhanced our website. As you know, we have a dedicated COVID-19 page, and I've lost track of how many things we send out on a given day. Sometimes it's many, some days it's not too much, but we've really tried to work to make sure that the community is getting information that's timely and focused on what they may need, whether it's business information. And we're also practicing what we learned from the fire in 2017, is that we're viewed as a credible information source. So we like to make sure that when we're sending stuff out, it's under the town moniker, if you will. People are looking at it, and I think we're receiving some good feedback from that. Obviously, we have a lot of uncertainty into the duration and but those kind of reflect where I should add one last thing. We're all learning how to do Zoom meetings. This is technically now our second Zoom meeting, and I think we all have to say that this is going much better. We're seeing, and the mayor and I were strategic in trying to make sure we did a few different types of presentations so that we understand if we're going to do a screen presentation or something. So Samantha was very helpful in helping to do that. The other thing, we also had the Arts Commission held their Monday, April 6th agenda meeting by Zoom as well. And for the most part, I think that went very well as well. So new technology. One of the areas that's not going so well is we're a tourism economy base. So the fiscal impact of the complete shuttering of the lodging and tourism economy in Yountville is going to result in a significant impact to the general fund revenue for this fiscal year and leading into the beginning of the next fiscal year. So I'm very confident of where we are for the current year, because I've taken a very pessimistic approach, as I've outlined with you, that anticipates about a 2.5 million revenue hit. The other thing I have to say is we've talked about this a lot, and the fact that we have established a number of reserve funds, be it the equipment replacement, the fleet replacement, the revenue stabilization, the OPEB, and the UAL. We now have, unfortunately, the opportunity that our prudence is going to be able to be used. So I anticipate that we're going to make the following adjustments for fiscal year 1920. We are reducing TOT revenue from 7 million by 1.3 million. I'm anticipating the loss of 300 in sales tax, and we will also not continue making additional internal payroll charges to the PERS UAAL trust fund. So that will save us about 80,000. And similarly, we will not continue further contributions this year to the OPEB trust. And I'm recalling the anticipated contributions from the general fund to Fund 81 facilities repair and replacement, and also Fund 82 fleet tools and equipment replacement. Furthermore, and we'd already been doing this as part of this year's budget, we're taking a really good look to see what the actual requirements are in Fund 81 and 82. And we may have the ability to make some, well, I should say the good news is we'll be able to continue to do what those things were programmed because they have funding, but we may not need to be making general fund contributions going forward. So that will help relieve pressure next year. We will be transferring 1 million from the general into the general fund from the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and we will be releasing the 469,000 annual contingency included in this year's budget. So the good news is we have a game plan that is going to weather the most pessimistic outline for this fiscal year. And we'll be able to continue services, programming, and activity as anticipated. I'm going to stop there first to see if there's any questions before I talk a little bit about what I see moving forward for next fiscal year.
I don't see any hands raised, but I'm going to add to what Steve was saying before you get further into the fiscal management piece. I believe you're all aware, but just to make sure, if anyone is watching this is not aware, Steve and I are on, they've been daily phone calls with the other mayors and city managers throughout Napa County, as well as supervisors and staff from Napa County, as well as our public health officer and experts. So we have been receiving literally at least once a day, if not more, updates on the status from a healthcare workforce and testing and all of those things that have also resulted in the county's stay home order that have put certain protocols in place that include all of us. So there was some initial confusion from some members of the public that said, okay, Napa County has done this. What about Yountville? What about the individual cities? And we reminded folks that Napa County includes all of us. It's in addition to what Napa County has set, that Yountville has set this emergency declaration with the content that Steve has been describing and the potential fiscal changes that we're considering. But remember that we fall under the state's executive order, as well as the county's executive order for our behaviors, for the closures of businesses, et cetera. We have added additional details, as Steve has mentioned and will be mentioning, related to TOT deferment and other details like that that are impacting our finances. But he's going to continue to roll out what the financial plan is to get through this. And so just with that kind of context, I want to hand it back to Steve to continue on how we're projecting into 2021.
All right, just to follow up on the last one, instead of 7 million, just for those of you that weren't doing math, I'm projecting 5.7 million in total TOT receipts. And that basically assumes nothing brought in from mid-March. As you saw in the February TOT report, we actually had a rather healthy February. We have provided a short-term deferral to our lodging properties for February and March payments only. They are still going to be received by the town in this fiscal year. As I've indicated, I don't think we're going to see, we'll have negligible TOT for the 2-week period finishing March. I don't anticipate any TOT for the month of April and the month of May. And it's too early to see if June may have something, but I'm projecting nothing for those 3 years. So, or 3 months, excuse me. So that's how I'm building the adjustment. So, like I say, we have a game plan. Departments are also looking, we're doing a little bit of belt tightening, but as you know, at this stage of the fiscal year, most of the projects are pretty much underway and concluded. And more importantly, you all have properly prepared this community so that we have the fiscal capability to weather a storm. As the mayor alluded to, we weren't necessarily all anticipating this, or I certainly will have to agree, I wouldn't have picked this timing. But it's here, and we have the ability to deal with it and continue to provide a high level of service to our residents. So going forward, right now I am anticipating that we will drop TOT revenue by 800,000. We will reduce sales tax revenue by 300. We have a lot of businesses that are going to defer their sales tax, but that sales tax still has to ultimately be paid. So yeah, that will come in.
Steve, before you move off of that point, just to make sure everyone's aware, the governor's order did allow some small businesses to delay sales tax payment for 1 year. I believe that term started on April 2nd. And so there are qualifications for the number of employees and the amount of sales tax generated that would allow that deferment. So it would potentially carry over into the next fiscal year if some of our small businesses take advantage of that.
Correct. And then we will continue with a suspension of the payroll contribution to the PERS UAAL Trust Fund, similarly to the OPEB Trust Fund. I do want to point out that both of those funds have healthy balances. I won't get into the current gyration of the market, but that both of those trust funds are certainly capable. We're not hurting the town long-term at all by a short year, 1 or 2 suspension. And in fact, we were probably due for a reduction in the internal rate for OPEB as the fund balance is growing. And again, I call these pausing because we have the ability to resume them when our revenue does, or if we have unassigned fund balance. And many of you that are been on the council long enough know that that's initially how we started funding many of these. And now we've actually built them into our annual internal budget. So we're just going to take a pause on those. We also will not make a general fund contribution to the Facilities Repair Replacement Fund 81 or the Fleet Tools Equipment Replacement Fund 82. And the budget will include a transfer of 500 from the Revenue Stabilization Fund. What's also important to note here is we still have 500,000 left in the Revenue Stabilization Fund that can be used if some of our revenue projections are not accurate. You'll also note we have not touched the 2 million emergency reserve fund, nor have we touched the 2.8 unassigned fund balance. So I want to share that with you because obviously, you know, the current analysis is that this is a point in time situation and we have the capacity to deal with it. We're well positioned and we're going to continue to, again, our budget will be a little tighter. The department heads are going back through. So you'll pretty much see a pause on some of those things we talked about adding or expanding. But for the most part, it's going to be a maintenance of effort budget and we'll reduce those internal transfers. Obviously, we'll see a little bit more of that, but Celia, Kyle, and I and the department heads, we've been learning how to have Zoom budget meetings. They don't really transfer Post-it notes well. So I'm just going to point that out that I use a lot of Post-it notes during the budget development, as most of the department heads know, but we're making good progress. We may be 2 weeks later in delivering the budget just because I'm going to want to take advantage of the best, most latest information that we have on projections. But again, we're going to be able to deliver the same level of services and expectation. And certainly we'll also be able to be responsive to changed environments that may happen during the fiscal year. And we'll be a little slower on adding things. And that we'll talk a little bit more about when we get into council agenda and calendars, which is the next topic, unless you all have some questions on how we're sort of moving and shifting a little, or as my favorite phrase now is I'm pivoting. But that's sort of how we see bringing the budget forward.
So I will go ahead and invite questions about the fiscal plans, we can still address if council has any questions about the specific language in the emergency declaration, because we do have some language that's specific to the town of Yountville that it kind of adds to what the county and the state stay-home orders have already mapped out. So fiscal questions specifically, I see the Vice Mayor has her hand up.
Thank you. And thank you, Manager Rogers, for the presentation. On the $2 million revenue stabilization fund, just a sort of a process question, which occurred to me as you were going through this. Why are we not dipping first into the emergency fund? Because that is actually restricted or set aside for things like this, and leave the $2 million revenue stabilization fund if we might need it later or for other non-emergency response.
Well, I'm going to suggest two things. One, we can go either. I don't want, but semantically, when we structured the revenue stabilization fund, it was tied to a loss in TOT revenue, and the emergency reserve concept was thinking more of a larger scale emergency. So, I mean, I'm drawing down because if you look at the policy, the policy use statement talks about tied to, and the revenue stabilization target is a percentage of TOT. But I mean, for our purposes, you're correct. Typically the revenue stabilization, let's say, you know, a hotel was off for, you know, 6 months and we didn't know or plan it, and we had a $400,000 loss. So typically we would go to the revenue stabilization fund, use it because that wasn't a true local emergency. But we do have a declared local emergency, and if that's the council's preference, in this particular case, I'm not going to get too excited one way or the other in terms of how you want to label your use of your reserves.
Well, before the Vice Mayor, if you wanted to follow up, let me also explain. I do think it's appropriate to use the stabilization fund instead of the emergency fund because of how the federal government is coloring money for potential reimbursement to the states and to local governments. We see it through the Small Business Administration with monies that are being made available specifically for business interruption and related loss of revenues. They aren't all related to disaster. And there are even some examples where the pandemic doesn't qualify for some disaster reimbursement language. So I do think that the nexus that Steve is drawing between the loss of business revenue and the fund to recover business losses does make sense. It might allow us to receive those federal and state dollars to then cover our business fund more than the disaster fund. That's still playing out, but there is that potential relationship.
Thank you.
Any other, Vice Mayor has her hand still up, but any other questions now? If not, I'll let Steve continue.
Yeah, the one thing you didn't hear from me is that we have X dollars coming from the state or the federal government, because currently we don't. If those of you are following local government, if we were purchasing or providing a public service response like some of them, then there is funding. But our biggest impacts right now are not from operating in an EOC function and responding what we're doing. They're from our biggest impacts are from a loss in revenue. And right now, we're hearing from some of the congressional delegation in California, especially, and I think some folks from the National League of Cities and the League of California Cities that are realizing small local governments been left out. They're adding costs to us in some cases, but they haven't indicated any funding. So that is something that we're all continuing to be active on and making sure that, hopefully there'll be some distribution. As many of you know, we're on the very unique end of dependency on TOT. Mammoth Lakes, Avalon, and Calistoga, and I'm drawing a blank to the fifth. Those are the top 5. So this is going to be a more challenging event for the 5. So anyway,
Steve, if you wanted to complete the staff report about the changes to the agenda, but I do want to go back in case council members have any questions about the content of the declaration, because it does call out some very specific language that's unique to Yountville.
And the only thing I'll also share with you, under the consent calendar, you actually did approve the new declaration. So to bring that back, the mayor is correct. What we've done in the most updated declaration is we've tried to tie in reference to the county, reference to the state of California and federal situation to tie. And we do have, at this point, reference to the TOT deferral. Anything more, John, that you want to add to that?
No, I think that's specific. Our local declaration is also going to extend 60 days. That's by law, according to Gary, that we must reaffirm it no later than 60 days from the affirmation. So different jurisdictions have been handling that differently. Napa County's stay-at-home order is effective until April 30. Other Bay Area counties go till May 3rd. The state is open-ended. It's basically staying open until further notice from the governor. So we have this established for at least the next 2 months, unless circumstances change and warrant reconsideration. But we don't have to address it every single council meeting, but know that we will be monitoring the need to either add or modify anything to the order, or to, as it pertains in some cases, to the economic status of our few remaining businesses that are operating.
That's correct, Mayor. And in most cases, we may need to extend it, and at some point we will have to end it, because our local emergency declaration, while it plays hand in glove with the public health order, it does serve a different structure under the legal code. It's our ability to say we don't have the resources, both fiscal or staff, to internally address. So I would anticipate that this will probably be extended even to some degree after we come out of a shelter at home, because we need to leave it open for a period of time to position to see what the true economic impacts may or may not be before we declare the local emergency over. So you are correct. We don't need to review it every council meeting, but we will need to put it back on periodically. The next area I wanted to talk to you all about is obviously how we choose to manage our agenda, our workflows, and those things that are on our current work plan for the next several months we need to talk about. I think we would all agree that so far the meeting, with the exception of the occasional slow bandwidth when somebody gets frozen momentarily, I think we're doing well. But not all of the topics that we currently have on our discussion necessarily merit this, and we also have a concern about some issues that historically have been generating a little bit more interest in the public. So, for example, we have, and there's in no order of importance or preference when I say this. I'm just saying these are some of the issues out there. The gas leaf blower ban. Is this something that you want to continue, or perhaps we put a pause on for the time? It also has a budget implication based on current council policy. We also will need to talk about our upcoming ZOTO update. Do we delay that? Or, given the fact that the first phase has gone through the ZDRB and public hearing process, are we ready? And in most cases, the public comment format that we're using here and the target audience that's been following that may be something that we can continue and look at moving forward on perhaps April 21st, Land use issues. Right now, we don't have a whole lot, but as you all know, while the governor's executive order modified a lot of things, it still did not completely change the timelines in which we have to process and bring forth public land use hearings. And then, of course, the cannabis initiative language, we had talked about having an April 21st workshop. And I think we at least want to buy a little more time before we talk about that. There may be some others that the council has, but those were just some of the ones, and the Yountville Elementary sculpture. So those are a few of the things that are floating out there. You all may have some others to add to that list. So my thought is, do you have some feedback and direction for how we might want to proceed over the next 8 weeks with some of those, as we will need to do council meetings at a regular time, because Gary will remind us all, ordinances have to be adopted at a regular council meeting. So the April 21st will be a regular council meeting at 6 p.m. because we will have a couple ordinances on there. But again, we're trying to manage the workflow, recognizing the environment, but also be prepared to do the work that needs to be done. So I'll turn it over to you all.
So I'll go ahead and jump in, maybe working a little bit backwards on your list. The schedule, I think there are some of those things on Steve's list that are time sensitive, and there are others that are much less so. The Yountville Elementary School closure and sculpture project, I think, is a very uncertain, has an uncertain calendar attached to it, with the potential non-closure of the school year. We may not have the same timing of trying to have some of those ideas vetted and concluded before the end of the school year. So we can, I think, monitor that as we go. But I do know that the Arts Commission has been able to make progress and has been working with artists and concepts. I could see us moving forward with that without an urgency of having the end of the school year driving that. I think the gas-powered leaf blower project can also move forward. We had made fairly significant progress with public comment on the item. We've met in multiple meetings to get public feedback. We were also considering a long phase-in and start date for that ordinance of at least the beginning of 2021. I would suggest that if we wanted to extend that into the middle of 21 or even the beginning of 2022 to allow a longer phase in for the landscaping community, that would be something that we could consider at a future council meeting. So I don't think that there is an urgency, but I do think that we can take advantage of the fact that we do have staff available and can continue to refine the concept that we have already had multiple conversations about. I think the zoning and design ordinance language should move relatively quickly and soon. We, as you've identified, we've already gone through much of the joint ZDRB council subcommittee meetings, as well as the ZDRB board meetings on the issue. We're very close to having that section, I think, kind of finalized for consideration. So I would not like us to see that delayed unnecessarily. Well, we do have some regular business that we are capable of handling and should be handling while we continue through the pandemic impacts. Then lastly, the cannabis topic is, I think, one of the more time sensitive that Steve has identified, being a ballot measure for the still November 2020 election. We have had public feedback. We want more public feedback. Now that Gary has been able to put the context of that ordinance language together, we will probably have to do it a little bit differently, whether it's having a virtual town hall on, a conference like this or in some other ways, but we'll definitely can be able to get the public feedback on the ordinance language that has been drafted by Gary, that the council will be considering now that we have a fairly complete, I think if Gary could back me up on that, fairly complete draft that's ready to be presented, because we were in fact working on that second meeting in April timeline. I think it's premature to have it on April 21 as the lights go out again here, and Jason has to walk through the empty council chambers to reset the light activation here. But I think we could postpone that into May. I don't think that we want to put something that has fairly significant public engagement on the 21st, since this is our first audio video meeting. I think it has been successful. I feel comfortable that we could have some public dialogue on this platform, but I also understand that some of the members of the public that have been coming to our council meetings are not as adept at managing Zoom or any other types of virtual meetings. So we want to give some time for that issue. So I will stop with my comments for now. I'll invite, I see Councilmember Dornbecker has her hand raised. Councilmember Dornbecker.
Thank you. I'm curious, just a clarification on if we're voting on ordinances, does that mean we have to be present in the chamber to do that, or it has to be a regular meeting at 6 p.m.?
Council Member Dornbecker, you do not have to be at the council chambers. It's just that it has to be at a regular schedule, and our regular council meetings are the first and third Tuesdays at 6 p.m. So okay. We will be doing, the meeting will look an awful lot like this, with some different PowerPoint presentations brought in to showcase some of the things that were being talked about and represented, and obviously the staff reports and everything sent out. So it won't look a whole lot different than the feel of this meeting.
Yeah, the governor has relaxed public meeting laws so that we can continue to teleconference these and be remote for public distancing. So that this will probably be our format for the next several months, foreseeable future, probably.
And I do agree that the deadline to get that ordinance language on the ballot for the cannabis, I think, is very important. So I think that should move forward. And it's a real dilemma about the school closing early, and is it ever going to open again? So there are a lot of known unknowns in a way. So there's in a way, I feel like we have to give it another at least 2 weeks before we have a better general grasp of actually looking ahead into the May and June, personally.
Councilmember Dornbecker, do you have an opinion about the leaf blower ordinance proceeding in any particular timeline?
Well, I could see putting it off till mid-2021 in order to give time for especially the small companies. We have a small a gardener company that blows the leaves here. And I asked him, I said, we are going to hopefully be having a program where we can, help subsidize or help you buy something if you have a business license in the town of Yountville. Do you? And he said, oh, yes, we do. So I think that it could be put off till mid-2021, but I'd hate to put it any farther out beyond that.
Thank you. And a reminder that when we talk about delaying the activation, it doesn't mean that we would necessarily delay the adoption of an ordinance. We may handle that in the next coming meetings in the next month or two, but we have all already spoken in agreement to have it phased in over an extended period of time. So originally we were discussing January 1st of 2021, as Councilmember Dornbecker mentioned, and I mentioned potentially middle of 2021, even beyond that, for consideration of the execution of the ordinance. But I do think that because we have had the public dialogue and a lot of it is still relatively fresh in all of our minds, action on that type of ordinance might still need to happen sooner than later. With that, other council members, not seeing hands raised, but I'm assuming there may be. Are there any questions? Yes, Councilmember Durham.
Do you want our opinions now or just questions?
Well, I think, let me do this. Let me just double check with Michelle, our clerk, to see if there were any public comments that were submitted related to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments. Okay,
thank you. So now we can offer opinions as well as ask questions. Councilmember Durham.
I might have an opinion. I attended, hold on, sorry, I took notes. I attended the last zoning design review board where they discussed all of yours and the ad hoc committee's work on the all of the changes they had done. And it seems that it should be able to move forward given all the input and the public that was involved in it along the way. So in my opinion, based on that last meeting and based on the input from the public, that the Zoto is definitely something that should move forward. In terms of the leaf blowers, I think there's still opportunity for nuance and change and discussion. As I know,
sorry, Jeff, you froze for just a moment. You had just said nuance about it, and then you froze for a moment. If you could just
and some feedback from a local business person as well as another company. And so I just want to make sure is that as we move forward, that we still see that there might be changes or different ways we can look at it. I just don't want to implement it and have it be done with. I still think there's opportunity for a lot of public comment on the leaf blowers. As far as the cannabis, we have discussed it a lot. We have had a lot of public comment on it as well. And in terms of the ordinance, we've all spoken about that, and we are under a time crunch to get that done. So I think that definitely needs to move forward. We can definitely wait till May to have the public talk about it and be involved with it. But I still think that with the sample ordinance that we got from the town attorney, we're still able to move forward and create some sort of draft document for the election in November. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I'm going to give Gary a heads up to unmute. I'm going to ask him, and then I'll ask Councilmember Mueller next to comment as soon as I see Gary's red phone. There we go. Okay, so could you just give the council your perspective on the cannabis, any ordinances we've been working on, whether it's leaf blower or cannabis, and the timing that you feel is appropriate to represent to the public and for potential action by the council. I think at least a single refresher presentation that would benefit both the council and the public on whether it's the leaf blower or the cannabis before we get into any action item might make sense. But can you give us your legal perspective, please, Gary?
Yeah, sure. I think it's absolutely still works within the time frame for the cannabis ballot measure to wait until May to have the discussion. The technical deadline to place it on the ballot is August 8th. That's the absolute last day that it can be done. I know that in consolidating the election with the county, that they're requesting that, I believe it's sometime in July, and Michelle can chime in on the exact date of that. So I think ideally, the call for the general election and the cannabis ballot measure would all be in the same resolution because it's cleaner and it can be done at the same time. And in order to meet the county deadline, I think that's in early July. But it could be pushed as late as August 8th. But all that to say, the town council is actually ahead of schedule in this process, now having the discussion in early April right now. And so if this were delayed until May, even if a final decision on language were at the end of May or early June, that would still give us plenty of time to place it on the ballot and to wrap it up. So we're in very good shape for the cannabis ballot measure with the timeline that's being proposed. For the leaf blower, I think it is actually currently drafted so that it takes effect in mid-2021. There's a revised draft that staff has been circulating based on the feedback that the council gave at the last meeting. We made revisions to it to take it out of the nuisance section that it was currently in. It's now a standalone section and incorporates all the feedback from the council at the last meeting. And so that's ready to go at any time. And there's a draft that's already prepared. The effective date is one line in the ordinance, so that can be easily changed even up to the day that it's adopted.
And related to that, would you suggest, as I presented, and either confirm or explain, if we were to move forward and adopt that ordinance, I know with the time stated in it and potentially things like a buyback program, some type of subsidy program, would it make a difference if we took action sooner than later and then modified it versus putting it on hold for any action to be delayed until sometime later? Is it basically as flexible either way?
So I think taking action earlier will allow town staff to begin the education and outreach efforts sooner, and will allow the rebate program and give companies a larger run time to come to compliance, get rebates to the extent they're eligible under whatever the program is, and to prepare for when that ordinance takes effect. And in addition to that, homeowners, because it doesn't just apply to the contractors who are doing the work, it's to everyone. And so if it's adopted earlier, I think there's more lead time. But of course, if it's adopted later, you can always provide more lead time by making the effective date even later. So I think it's really just up to the council on how much lead time, when to adopt it, and what the timing is for the ordinance.
Great, thank you. And before I go to Councilor Moeller, Steve, your hand is raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to amplify a couple things. This was scheduled, the gas leaf blower ban, as Gary's alluded to. Actually, the staff report, the resolution, and all of the enabling were all set to go in the April 7th. No, the canceled council meeting. The one thing that we need to get some clarification on is the council had committed to a level of engagement and ensuring that Mr. Bosny and a few of his associates were able to come speak to the council. And also you had indicated there was some support that the town needed to put funding towards it. So those would possibly be something we would have to revisit in terms of timing. But as Gary alluded to, the proposal that was coming before you had 2 dates for you to choose from, including, both that have been mentioned. So it's really a question of when the fiscal year timing for a potential grant program and whether that would be shifted or something we can afford to do next year or not.
Thank you. Councilmember Moeller?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. So not in any particular order. I definitely believe we should move ahead with the cannabis ordinance so that we can meet our deadlines for November. Overall, let me go back to leaf blowers. Thank you, town manager. I think with budgets coming up, I think we're going to be looking pretty closely at all of our budgets. I know we're all optimistic, but with budgets coming up, I think we're going to be very realistic. We just don't know what the future is. It's really going to be hard to predict a lot of things. So in terms of the leaf blower, these are the types of things that can be delayed, and I think they're going to be if there's any kind of rebates, they'll probably be very likely the first ones to kind of fall off the list. So, and just as a side note, it's the only thing I kind of hear outside besides the birds anymore. So it's a little bit of like real life still going on. So I am in no hurry to push that forward at this time. I think it needs a lot more conversation. And again, back to, I think overall we need to be very, very flexible in terms of what we're really planning. I think there are so many unknowns still ahead of us that we should, instead of kind of planning some of these things, really be flexible as much as possible. So when things do come up, that they take precedent over a lot of things that we might have had planned to talk about. The state is certainly doing that. All the bills that are going through the legislature, they're only dealing with a few things right now, such as the virus and fires and other emergency things relating to PG&E. Everything else that we're working on is a lot of our subcommittees were told just put them on hold. It's just not going to get anybody's attention. So I think that we need to have that flexibility. And I think we're really going to learn a lot during our budgets, because I think town manager gave a very nice presentation on how we have been putting a lot of money away into lots of different buckets, and we can pull some of that out. But since we cannot predict the future and what our businesses are, which ones are going to open, which ones are going to close permanently, which ones we're going to probably be having a lot of new use permits that might come up or changes. I see a lot of that stuff kind of coming up. So as long as we have a way to move those important things financially related to the forefront, that's kind of my position on our priorities.
And in terms of Zoto?
Yes, no, I think seems like Zoto is about there, and that is, I think it could possibly help add a lot more kind of flexibility with what I expect we're going to see from businesses and changes in the future.
Thank you. Town Clerk, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Mayor. I don't appear to have, as host, a hand raise option.
Okay.
Blue hand raise. So I wanted to add on to the town attorney's comments about the election deadline. And as we know, we're trying to have our ballot measure and call for election approved at the town council June 16th meeting. July 8th is the goal to get it to be the Board of Supervisors. And then July 23rd is the backup date to sort of stay on target. Gary is correct that the technical deadline is August 8th. However, the Board of Supervisors, they're not meeting between July 30th and August 20th. Now, how they would handle the delay from the municipalities due to this pandemic and whether they would call another special meeting to handle all the election items, that remains to be seen. But I just wanted to add that to the discussion.
Good, thank you for that clarification. I think it kind of reinforces what Gary was explaining about our options with that timing into June and July. So thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, comments?
Yes, thank you. So going down the list, Mayor, as you put them in order, the yes sculpture, I agree, kind of a monitor and watch, and when we need to put it in, we will. Leaf blowers, I like the idea of waiting until after we budget. I know you raised the issue of, is it better to do it maybe without some sort of funding attached and then come back and revise it? Since we're about to go into budget season, it may not hurt to go ahead and wait and see it in June and then a longer fuse as you suggested, but I'm open to however we do that. Soto, I agree, relatively quickly. Cannabis, I agree, is more time sensitive, and we should work now, as we see from the town clerk, toward a July 8th date with a backup of 7/23. So I'm in agreement with your propositions.
Great, thank you. Councilor Durham, your hand's up.
Yes, thank you. For Michelle, the dates that you stated are for council member, for anybody who wants to run for the 2 council seats that will be up this year as well. Are those the same dates for that? For everything you stated. All right, cool. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you for a verbal confirmation. Yes, when there may be a way to bifurcate that, and I would have to ask the town attorney to clarify that. But typically the town council calls for the consolidation of the election to elect members and to have ballot measures on the ballot. We do it all in one reso, but we could research that, and I can work with Gary.
And just to confirm also, Michelle, any countywide ballot measures that may be brought forward would follow the same timeline that you described?
I can't speak to the county.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just curious that it doesn't necessarily apply to what we're talking about here. Just it would be cleaner and more understandable if we were aligned with the same deadlines that may apply if there are any ballot measures at the countywide level. There is a whole nother conversation about signature gathering for ballot measures and the challenge that is happening for that process to go forward. So we have to kind of continue monitoring how that's going to play out also.
Well, and Mayor, to that point, and for the council as a whole, we're talking about the council placing the ballot initiative on. It's a very different timeline and process than that of a petition submitted by with the petition signatures. So you're correct. Those are deadlines. Without going out and saying exactly what the county is going to do, what I will tell you, the framework is roughly the same because the county has to do the same thing, consolidating. And you've heard the county make the decision, at least related to cannabis, that they were not willing to place the ordinance on the ballot. So that would have required the petition signature gathering process to go and be turned in. So, I mean, I really think we want to really focus on July 8th, have it all ready to go, consolidate, because the other thing is we also need to realize we only have our elections every 2 years. So if you don't do it in this fall election, you're either going to have a special election, which will be paying the full cost of whatever that might be, versus the consolidated election when we have county, our 2 seats, and any, the incremental cost of a ballot initiative is minor when we have a consolidated election.
And actually, I think the counties, what they refused to do was to actually just adopt the ballot measures as were written. The council here decided that we, instead of adopting an ordinance as written without the election, we agreed that we would put it on. So it's actually kind of an opposite scenario. But the bottom line is we understand that we have into June and July to go forward with a couple months of public consideration of the draft. We could present that draft potentially the first meeting of May and see how things are going in terms of public meetings, if we are able to yet reconvene in the same space or not. And if not, we'll just work it out by teleconferencing like we're doing right here. There's still going to be the ability to send in emails, e-comments through that whole process. Yeah, Michelle?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add on to what Steve said, is our July 8th and July 23rd dates are actually were developed in consultation with the county election and elections official, and so that's why we're selecting this timeline.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker, I know you spoke early before you've heard all this other dialogue. I wanted to give you a chance if there was anything else you wanted to add to the guidance we're giving Steve related to these agenda items.
Well, it slipped my mind that we're actually going into budget season, and I think a lot of things will become more clear. For example, the what we're going to do about the leaf blowers, if we're going to do anything, and so I agree with everything else, and I think it is important to get this cannabis on the ballot. So otherwise, everything, as we go forward, there are, like I said, there are some known unknowns and some unknown unknowns. So I think the budget process will really clarify a lot. So I'm good with what we're doing. Great, thank you. And I agree that we have discussed some type of subsidy buyback program as a component of the leaf blower ordinance, and it is important that we understand what our financial situation is. What I would want to make clear, if we do postpone reconsideration of that, is that there's an understanding that it's not being forgotten and put in the long-term consideration file, that we are just looking to get some clarity as we work through our budgets in especially the rest of April and into May. We can very well get some clarity that quickly, potentially. We just, as Councilmember Dornbecker just said, there are certain levels of uncertainty that we just can't yet clarify. So, Steve, do you feel like you have enough direction as it relates to that piece of this item, the planning piece? That would be not a blue hand, but a regular skin tone thumbs up. Okay, thank you for that. Let's see, did you, so we do need a formal action here, Michelle, correct?
No.
No?
No. This whole thing was informational, directional, to give us direction to go forward, and you guys have aced it. This is very helpful. We will be able to put a game plan moving each one of these as well as we navigate, and a few other things that are in the queue that will show up. And I will also try to make judicious use of the consent calendar as well. So, but I have pretty strict policies about what goes into a consent calendar item, as you know. But I think, we're going to try to continue making sure as much gets done as can be, while recognizing we've got a few more engaging. But no, I think I'm excited to think that, and I know I'm speaking for Sandra here as well, that we think moving forward with the first phase of the Zoto is really important, because then we can continue the effort into the phase 2. And obviously cannabis, you've given us some good feedback on that. Gas leaf blower ban really is going to come down to a budget decision in terms of the grants. We have it drafted. Timing is up to you all. And yes, sculpture, I think, we'll see where the ad hoc committee and then bring that back when it's ready. It shouldn't be too far delayed. I will also share with you, master fee schedule will come back on April 21st. Celia and I are looking at possible a private placement refinancing of the about $2.5 million Yount Street water and town hall remaining. Right now, we might be able to save about $60,000 over the next 6 years on that. So we're doing some feasibility, but your staff is trying to look at some ways to help save monies and look at that, because if I can save us $60,000, as opposed to just paying what the current bond or COP, I should say, on that is. So we may have a resolution about that. But again, I think some of those will be the types of things you would expect us to do, and make sense to do when we're talking about belt tightening and looking at ways to save money, just as a simple example.
Great, thanks, Steve. And just a reminder, because we were talking quite a bit about our fiscal outlook and planning, just to reinforce the fact that our local emergency declaration is in collaboration with Napa County's executive order and the state of California's executive order. So all of those things merge together, and some of the content of our declaration speaks specifically to the conditions here in Yountville, and those conditions may need modification going forward depending on how the circumstances play out. So it may come back for our consideration in less than 60 days, but if it's kind of a status quo, then we'll be able to set that aside and let it just be implemented for a period of time. So
and I would say to amplify what the mayor is saying, probably if we come forward, we don't need to bring everything. We would talk about an addendum to the order. A good example would be there was been some early discussion about eviction moratorium. And then ultimately the state came forward, provided that direction and guidance. That is certainly something that some local cities and or counties have done differently, but ours has been addressed right now. So that's the kind of flexibility that we're really talking about here. Are those local orders there too? In other words, that are appropriate and unique to Yountville that we may want to address differently. And we don't really know what all of those may or may not be as the next 4 to 8 weeks play out.
But if there are no specific modifications to our order, we are to follow Napa County's order and state of California's order. And I think that's important to reiterate that if Yountville's declaration is silent on certain things, it doesn't mean they don't apply to us. In terms of business activity, in terms of one thing that's in discussion these days is about face coverings. There is no requirement for it. The state or the county could change that direction. Even if we don't change that direction in the Yountville declaration, those things would still apply, for example, for the types of essential businesses that are allowed and not allowed. So I think we've made all of those things clear. So thank you. With that, I'm looking ahead to our next agenda items. Any additional staff informational reports, Steve? I'm reading your lips, no. Okay, there we go. Council meeting reports, comments. Are there any reports that any of our council members have to report out on? I do have a few things I'm going to get to, but I'll invite, I see Council Member Moeller, and then I believe Council Member Dornbecker is looking to raise a hand, but Council Member Moeller, please.
I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that our Upper Valley Waste Management, we're going to have a special meeting tomorrow because we're interviewing new attorneys for our JPA, and we're going to have our regularly scheduled meeting by Zoom on April the 20th. But what we're seeing right now is a major decrease in our revenues because of the closure of wineries, businesses, and restaurants. And the Waste Management Agency is probably going to be down significant revenue. So it's just not something I know we always think about the town and a lot of our businesses, but it's having some pretty significant impacts on our waste management companies that we work with too.
Thank you. And that has been discussed at the state level. Some of the calls I've been on, many cities have been bringing that up as an area of concern as well. So thank you.
And we've been sending letters to the governor and lots of people on everyone's behalf on the waste management industry. And also I wrote a personal letter sent by our JPA to the governor as well. So
Thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes, I just wanted to report that we did have an executive, the executive committee meeting of the North Bay division of the League of California Cities, and there were all 4 counties were, there was representation, and everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's really worried about the loss of revenue, and also the future health of the small businesses in their cities and towns. We have decided that because everything is so, difficult to plan at the moment because there are so many unknowns. The only thing we did plan was the date for the City Pack bocce tournament, which will be August the 30th in the town of Yountville. And so we thought we'd end on that note because it was sort of an upper, but otherwise everybody was pretty well down in the dumps in every county. So we're not surprised, right? But anyway, that's my report.
Thank you. Any report out, Councilmember Durham? Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did attend a webinar / seminar for the League of California Cities Policy Community Engagement Committee. And as you may surmise, there is not much going on the Housing and Community Development Committee. There is not much going on at the legislature right now other than the COVID issues, but they do expect some housing bills to be probably and possibly moving later, and they will be bringing those to us at our June meeting.
Councilmember Dornbecker?
Could you tell?
There you go.
I too had a Zoom meeting with our Revenue and Taxation Committee meeting, and we discussed the fall in revenues that we're all going to be confronting, and the number of bills that have been introduced for housing. I guess 300 bills have been introduced, but there are about 30 to 40 that are actually getting some traction and being looked at. And also, I'll have a more comprehensive report next time because I did take copious notes from that meeting. And since it was about revenue and taxation and we went for 3.5 hours, there was a lot that we covered. So next time I'll give you a better rundown on what we went over. I apologize.
Great, thank you.
Also, I'm sorry. I've also on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons been attending a webinar put on by CalOES and the League of California Cities and CSAC about the COVID-19. And now every time I hear the words, I want to scream. So that's all I can say. It's just, it's distressing on every level. So, but we have done pretty well in California. And I got to say, I really personally have been very impressed with the governor's updates each day. He's really, I think, shown a great deal of leadership.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have your hand up still?
Yes, thank you. One other thing, Councilmember Dornbecker and I had a Zoom meeting last Friday to get some folks together for our Yountville Neighbor Network that we created as part of our emergency preparedness. And I'm going to put Director Holland on the spot here and perhaps our town manager, because they have, we are in the process of implementing a new piece of this that is specific to the COVID-19 response, and it is a volunteer match. So I was hoping Director Holland might give a bit of info on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
So yeah, it definitely dovetails into the Yountville Neighbor Network and trying to find a safe way and in a way that is reactive to the incident that we're in right now, for people who may need help, and then also for those who are offering help. And so there could be a segment of our community that we're continuing to miss through our press releases on social media or next door, because they may not be online, and if they're not leaving their house, they may or may not getting the Yountville Sun. So we discussed ways to outreach to them, which will be through door hangers that will go out, be deployed next week. But we've set up a new help email, help@yville.com. We also have a phone number. So this is for non-emergency help. So it's not something you're going to call if you need medical care or something like that. But if you need help with your shopping or pet care or walking your dog, or just need answers to questions and ways to get resources and information, that'll be something that we can definitely help with. And so we've internally created a process for intaking those calls and requests, and then, you know, kind of triaging them and figuring out how to proceed. We also have created a online form where we have them that could be emailed or picked up to become a volunteer. So asking for kind of basic information and what kind of tasks that people in the community are willing to do, so that we can try to help match them up, whether that's someone who isn't comfortable or cannot leave their home to pick up groceries or needs pet food, and someone who does can do those things safely. And part of that will be making sure that we're educating our volunteer group on how to conduct those things safely. And so we've set up some parameters. You know, these are the things that will be available to do, and these are the things that won't. For example, you know, outside of the COVID-19 event, we may match up a volunteer who can help an older person replace a light bulb that's high in their house. But right now, we're not going to be advocating for chores that need to happen inside. So that's just an example of that. So those press releases are going out. It should be in the Sun on Thursday. And then we're also going to be walking those door hangers early next week. And all of that information is being presented in English and Spanish, and it will go out to every household in Yountville, with the exception, of course, of the Veterans Home. We're not obviously able to provide those services up there, at least at this time.
John, we can't hear you.
Councilmember Dornbecker, did you turn your microphone back on to comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mistake.
Vice Mayor, I would like to recognize and ask if you would just share the efforts that you've been leading with the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group and others, some volunteers that have been providing food deliveries to some of our locals that have been home isolating. First, I'd like to thank you and thank TKRG, but if you could maybe just explain a little bit. I know some of our town staff have also been working with you on that project, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, TKRG has really stepped up. We are delivering, we started out 3 days a week, now we're to 2 days a week. I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks now, and we deliver probably right at 30 meals, sometimes more per week. And I have a wonderful team of volunteers. I've been, as you said, Mayor, working with the staff. I'm also in contact with Shandong. They may be looking at kind of a longer term, kind of a family food kit idea. We're working through that. And a number of our other restaurants did offer, Grupo Chiarello, Perry Lang's. I mean, everyone I talked to said, yes, they were interested, but so many of them have already had to close for various reasons. They were not able to participate. But I am, I think I've heard it said many ways, but I am so proud of our town, our businesses and our residents. So thank you to everyone.
Yes, I did want to just make sure that that was recognized for the effort that was happening out there. I also just received yesterday and have been working with town manager an anonymous donation of surgical masks that we are going to be properly allocating. We're going to be reaching out to our healthcare sector to make sure that that very generous donation is received. In particular, the request was to support our Yountville community, and we plan on doing that in a proper and a very effective way. So again, we're seeing an amazing level of generosity coming from a lot of our community members, our staff, and our businesses. So thank you for that. I will just very briefly, because I'm guessing that folks that might be paying attention to this meeting have also seen many of the postings that I've been putting both on Facebook and Nextdoor, at the very least, about regular calls. Councilmember Dornbecker referenced the twice a week calls that are now 5 days a week, by the way, for some of us that are lucky enough. But the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties continues now daily calls with the state emergency services, public health professionals, FEMA, National Guard, Department of Finance, and a few other topic experts. They are regionalizing these calls so that on Mondays, Councilmember Dornbecker, as the North Bay president, and I will be on that call that is more specified to our Northern California region. Each day they have a different region in California that they will be targeting for these updates and how they are rolling out, whether it be delivery of healthcare supplies or other resources. And as the federal stimulus money is coming to the states, how that allocation may be happening. So far, it doesn't look like there'll be a lot of direct financial support. As Steve mentioned earlier, right now, the federal money is targeted for populations of 500,000 and above. And then there is an allocation of some additional money that's more of a state discretionary pot of money. So we will be working as cities and our counties to try to get some of that money to help us cost recover either direct expenses or in some cases supporting our small businesses that have been severely financially impacted by COVID-19. So I am on regular calls through the League of California Cities, the National League of Cities, occasionally with the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. I certainly understand Councilmember Dornbecker's reference to eventually you kind of get sick and tired of hearing from some of these folks on some of these issues, but you know, it's still really important that we stay engaged and try to find whatever solutions that they are going to make available to us so that we can act on those. I'm also on daily calls with my mayor colleagues, the Board of Supervisors, and county staff, as well as Steve and other city managers. We, I think, are going to shift those to Monday, Wednesday, Friday update calls to discuss about the Napa County executive order and developments with our healthcare sector in terms of testing, positive tests, negative tests, and various things related specifically to the public health response to the coronavirus. So you'll be hearing from all of us, I suspect, on an ongoing basis. That's really the majority of my meeting comments. I do want to recognize also Whitney Diver McAvoy and the Chamber of Commerce, who have been working very consistently to support our business sector. I know that the other chambers throughout Napa County are coordinating efforts with Visit Napa Valley in addition to start to strategize how do we recover from this. Unfortunately, we have had numerous experiences, the wildfires, the real estate fall and economic recovery from that, droughts, floods, and we will have a response that is being worked on now as we continue to even work through the current conditions. But I know that Whitney and her team are helping disseminate a lot of that small business support information out to our businesses, our unfortunately unemployed workforce, so that they can get some of the financial resources being made available. The last thing I want to recognize, and it's perfect timing that Jason's walking in the room, to keep the lights on again. But thank you to James and Jason from Napa TV for making this meeting happen. I know that Michelle, Julie, many folks, Samantha, and others have made it possible that we can even be broadcasting today. We do see this as our new platform for the foreseeable future. So I want to thank all of our town staff, many of whom are working from home. Some are coming in on limited hours, but all are staying dedicated and committed to serving the residents and the businesses of Yountville. So a very generous from all of us on the town council. Thank you to all of you for the support, even in this time of personal hardship. We know it's hard on all of us. So with that, we don't have a closed session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And I believe, as Steve said, we do need to hold that meeting, our next regular meeting, April 21st at 6 p.m. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn to that next regular meeting.
So moved.
Councilmember Dornbecker made the motion, seconded by?
A second.
Councilmember Durham. One last roll call vote for the day. Vice Mayor Dorman.
Yes.
Councilmember Moeller.
Yes.
Councilmember Durham.
Yeah.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes.
And I say yes as well. Thank you all again. We are adjourned. Please stay safe. Good night.
Good night.